Welcome to the Finer Femininity Catholic Women's Podcast, a podcast for Catholic women with traditional values, women who are striving for sanctity, learning to be more joyful and feminine in their vocations by studying Our Lady, the saints, and revered Catholic men and women. And now your host, mother of 11, grandmother of 26, Leanne Vanderputten.
A Meditation for Lent. Veronica Wipes the Face of Jesus by Joseph Brieg, 1950s. What happened to Veronica's veil was simply an outward expression of what happened in Veronica's soul. Unless we understand this, we understand nothing about the spiritual life. Christ sometimes chided the multitudes because they came to see signs and wonders, and not to learn from him the way of holiness. In Christ's words at such times, we hear a note that can only be called a holy impatience. He seems to cry out against the blindness of people who cannot seem to see the point of his coming, who are moved by curiosity and excitement, or by a desire for physical healing, or by the hope of having favored positions in a new earthly kingdom, but not by the thirst for truth and goodness. If we were Veronicas, we would not be running about looking for miracles. We would be looking for opportunities to serve Christ rather than being served by Christ. If we were Veronicas, we would be able to see the divine behind the human. We would know Christ under all the layers of the world's sorrow and suffering. If we were Veronicas, we would not need Lourdes and Fatima. We would need only the knowledge that somebody was in need, and that we serve God by serving fellow men for the sake of God. Veronica, when she approached Christ, could not have expected or even wanted a miracle. What she saw was a man condemned as a criminal and being led to execution. What she saw also was an opportunity to do a kindness out of the charity of a heart that kept the two great commandments, love God and love fellow men. Veronica saw a man who was a sight to make one turn away one's eyes. She saw a man whose flesh had been scourged to ribbons. Upon his head a crown of great thorns had been pressed, so that his hair and face were a mass of dried blood. He had been spat upon and struck with fists. From head to foot he was bloody and bruised, swollen and black and blue. He was a dreadful spectacle. We may be sure that it took an effort of the will for Veronica to come forward to him and to cleanse his face. Not only was he a repellent sight, but by approaching him in pity, she accepted for herself something of the contempt and hatred that was being heaped upon him. It is likely that people screamed maledictions and taunts at her. No matter, Veronica's soul was a soul that loved. It was a grace-filled soul, a soul into which Christ could look and see his own reflection, the image and likeness of God. And so Christ, for a testimony of his own divine power and of Veronica's goodness, impressed upon Veronica's cloth the image of his face. But he did not chide her for seeking signs and wonders. She did not seek signs and wonders. She sought ways and means of serving God, of serving Christ and his fellow men, of earning the right to hear eventually from him the words, "If you did it to one of these, my least brethren, you did it to me." We are all tempted to go seeking signs and wonders rather than to see the signs and wonders that are all around us. We kneel in church, perhaps, while making the Stations of the Cross, and we wish that we could have been Veronica, that we could have wiped the face of Christ and seen his face imprinted on the cloth. Then we go home and never think that the face of Christ is all around us, waiting to be cleansed of its blood and sweat and tears. The face of Christ is there in the lines on the countenance of grandpa or grandma. It is there in the weariness of wife or husband. It is there in the tears of a child over some little mishap. It is next door in the troubles of a neighbor. The face of Christ is a millioned face. In every human being on earth, it waits for our touch of comfort and encouragement. A husband is a Veronica when he helps his wife with the dishes, or brings her some token of his affection, or takes her out to dinner, or tells her of his love as he used to tell her in the days of courtship. A wife is a Veronica when she smiles away her husband's discouragement over his job or his business, when she lifts his spirits with a word of admiration, when she renews his youth by her devotion. Fathers and mothers are Veronicas when they kiss away the tears of children, when they quiet their fears about their schoolwork, when they help them with their little concerns, when they praise their small accomplishments, filling them with new confidence. We are Veronicas when we go next door or into a house down the street to offer our services in times of tribulation. We are Veronicas when we spend some time with lonely, aging folk. The earth is brimful of Christ hiding behind the faces of the worried, the hungry, the sorrowful, the doubtful, the uninstructed. Wherever there is need, there is Christ, waiting for the touch of our Veronica cloth of kindness on his face. And each time we touch him so, his image and likeness grows brighter and clearer in our own souls. It can grow so bright and clear that when the Eternal Father looks upon us, he sees in us his only begotten Son. And Mary, too, sees her Son in us, as she saw his image on Veronica's veil. Signs and wonders? Is it not a sign and a wonder that with a word and a smile we can lift the soul of another out of sorrow into joy, out of unhappiness into happiness, out of discouragement into hope? Is it not a sign and a wonder that with the cloth of our unselfish concern we can smooth away the lines of fear or pain from the face of Christ in one of Christ's fellow men? Is it not a sign and a wonder that we can turn the sobbing of a child into laughter? In the persons of each of his fellow men, Christ will be carrying his cross as long as the human race endures. There will never be a day or a place in which he cannot be found, his face seamed with suffering or anxiety, and wet with blood or tears, in the face of one of those for whom he suffered. There is no moment when any one of us cannot be a Veronica. We could be Veronicas even in the solitude of a desert, for although we were isolated from our fellow men, we could, with our prayers, come to their assistance, whether they were here on earth or suffering in purgatory. To be a Veronica is the high privilege of every last one of us.
Thank you for joining us today. Please stop by the Finer Femininity website to enjoy articles on the single life, the married life, raising children, and the spiritual life, all written by solid Catholic authors. You can follow Finer Femininity on Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest. God bless you, and see you next episode.